Hi, my name is Lee, and today we will be discussing the Feminine Mystique, a nonfiction novel written by Betty Friedan in 1963. Most importantly, it's credited as the beginning of the second wave of feminism, meaning she kind of created an entire movement by herself, and it started with a couple of pages. In the novel, Friedan argues that an idealized image of domestic womanhood had created an identity crisis amongst women. Friedan argues that women were socially pressured into becoming the ideal images of women, which meant being housemakers. This is where not only the career housewife ideology came into play, but also what the actual feminine mystique was. The term given to the idealized image of domestic femininity that arose in around the 1950s, the mystique, as it was known, was mostly led on by the media at the time. And what the media was at the time was a push into the idea of what it was to be feminine, which at the time was being a housemaker. So it was like advertising the perfect life for them. And since a lot of young women were very grateful for being in a non-war world, that they wanted to be happy. They didn't want to continue the violence. They didn't want to continue anything negative. So they were, of course, very eager to go into this world of how to be happy. And since they did do it so blindly, they were all led into a life which previous women had fought to get out of. Through a lot of interviews with American housewives, she discovered the problem that they were suffering from, and it was the just general dissatisfaction with their life. And mostly, each individual housewife had some extent of an identity crisis, which was coined the term the problem with no name, because so many women were dealing with this in such a different way, and they were all so isolated with their feelings that the problem really did have no name, because they didn't know that there was a problem and how to deal with that problem because of the forced feminine mystique that was pushed on them after their pre-war emancipation. Down below I put two videos. I think it's one video and an article about what feminism is and how it could be affecting us right now. I think you should read this book because it really shows how not long ago this was. This was about 40 to 50 years ago, and a lot of women alive right now, and a lot of elderly women right now, are the ones who were forced into households, and many of them are grandparents, and many of them don't really speak of how it happened or how we got out of it, but there's still a lot of weird aura around it. And so I think you should read this book because it really shows how they were our age, like how they were forced into this and how we should stay out of it and figure out our own identity.